Good morning, and welcome to a brand new DCU update. All right, I just posted a video yesterday, but there were a couple of stories that got released shortly after I did that video to where I feel like I needed to do another video, and we're going to talk about a couple of interesting things. And again, I'm going to keep this as optimistic as I can. Now, this is interesting. We're going to jump right in here. So the first story I want to talk about is the Flash movie. It is, and by the way, yesterday I talked about the suit, and somebody pointed out that the suit was actually taken off of Batman Returns, which I did not go and look up. That is the Batman movie I am least familiar with, so I did not go and look it up, but somebody made that comment, and I'm thankful for that. That's why I love comments. People can correct you when you get something wrong, and apparently the suit from the movie did come from Batman Returns, and I don't know if somebody wants to confirm that. That would be great. But anyway, the Flash movie is getting released a week earlier than originally anticipated. Woohoo! Still might be 3 years later or 4 years later than they had originally anticipated, but we are getting it a week earlier than what the current date is. I can't believe that this film has been bumped around so many times, but it has, and there are reasons for this. I will be actually doing a video, an Indiana Jones update, later today, I believe. But The Flash is opening on June 16th of this coming year because they wanted to give it a little more breathing room ahead of Disney's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which will come out 2 weeks later. So this is good news if you are interested in the Flash movie. I still am not convinced this is going to be the movie I want, but we will see shortly. So that is one of the stories I wanted to talk about today. Now, the next one is very interesting, and this is going to get people, we're going to get all kinds of comments on this one. Black Adam is officially considered a flop. It is scheduled to have between $50 and $100 million worth of box office losses here. They go on to tell us that the box office so far globally is at $387 million. That's after 7 weeks, so it's only been out for 7 weeks. That is a box office run, and that is pretty respectable, but when you look at superhero films, and I'm going to show you a chart here in a few minutes, it's not as good as it could be. And this is, post-COVID, and people are still wanting to go to the movies, but this movie did not bring people to the theaters like, let's say, a year ago when Spider-Man No Way Home came out. Now, obviously, that film had stuff in it to drive people to the theater. I went and saw it a couple of times. But Black Adam, on the other hand, the big thing was that Henry Cavill was in it. And it's a good thing Henry Cavill was in it, because if Henry Cavill was not going to show up at the end, this global take would have been much lower. And I'm going to talk about my feelings on this as soon as I get through this article here. But so the movie cost $195 million to produce, and honestly, it's probably higher than that. This movie was in production for about 15 years, which is crazy. But the marketing spend was $100 million worldwide. Plus, you have to consider the take that they scaled back the global advertising campaign to $80 million, and then you have to factor in how much that the actual theaters take in for the ticket prices. So they let us know that the movie is going to lose $50 to $100 million in its theatrical run. So let's talk about this here for a second before I show you this next graphic. Honestly, this is what I expected out of Black Adam. I don't know what people were expecting. This is not a character that I think is widely known to the general public. It's kind of an unknown character, and unless there's something big that's going to really enhance the experience, I don't think people were going to go see this to begin with. Yes, it's Rock's biggest box office opening for any movie he's ever done, but it fizzled quickly thereafter. Now, a lot of people are going to complain that, DC fans just won't support it. I saw Grace Randolph this morning post a thing saying, DC fans on the internet. She posted a graphic of a bunch of people, and then she posted a graphic of a few people going to the theaters, and she made that connection that, DC fans have a big voice on the internet, but they're not supporting the films. Here are some things that people need to remember. This was the last film, well, there's a few more films coming, but one of the last films to really have the hand of the old regime in it, Walter Hamada and those individuals, Toby Emmerich and some of the others. And this is to be expected. People are afraid about what DC is doing. They're kind of unsure. Now, this movie had a great audience response. I think it sits at about 95% or some crazy high number of people really liked the movie. But that doesn't equate to ticket sales, okay? And ticket sales and getting people in the theater are big. And it doesn't help when the critics bash the film. And I made a video about that, and I talked about that specifically. People say that critics don't have sway. They do to a lot of the general public. For the average moviegoer who goes to Rotten Tomatoes and is just going to go, well, okay, if it's between this film and this film, and this film has a much higher score by critics, well, that's the one I'm going to go see. Because here in America, they do not advertise the audience score. They advertise the Rotten Tomatoes score by critics, which I think needs to switch. I think that's a huge problem here in the United States with the way movies are reviewed, and it does affect the box office. There's no question about it. For the average moviegoer who might have gone to see Black Adam, they skipped it because it had such a horrible, horrible review score by critics. The audience score loved it, though. I really think they need to change those. In some other countries, they do show the audience score above the critic score, which is something that I think needs to change. Now, here's an argument that I hear a lot of times. People will say that Zack Snyder's films were never profitable. And that might be true, but I'm going to show you a graphic, and I'm going to show you how much more popular DC movies were when Zack Snyder was involved. So I love when I can show graphics like this, and this is interesting. So we've got all the DCEU films listed on here, and you can see Man of Steel was first, and it stands at a respectable number up here, okay, when you see the profit. And Aquaman is the most successful film to date, and I really enjoyed Aquaman. I thought that was a very ambitious film, but let's look at this here. So Man of Steel made quite a bit of money, but you got to remember, everybody saw Christopher Reeve in their minds. That's who they saw as Superman. And so this one could have made more money, but we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. And critics really didn't latch on to Man of Steel. I think the biggest problem of the film was that the ending was a little too long, but that film gets better with age. Like, I just watched it a month ago, and I still love that film. Like, every time I see it, as time goes on, it's better and better. It's actually a phenomenal film. Then you had Batman vs. Superman, which made even more money, but it was bashed by critics from day one. One of the worst reviewed movies to ever be released by critics. They totally bashed it, and I will admit, when I saw it in theaters, I understand the history and comics and stuff, and I enjoyed it more than I went with my brother, I went with my dad, I went with my family. I went many times, and I do admit that there were issues with it, but then the extended version came out, and it was phenomenal. You had Suicide Squad after that, which was a decent film. I really enjoyed that. It made more than Man of Steel. It showed people were still interested in the DCU, post Batman vs. Superman. Then Wonder Woman came out, which was a big surprise. That movie was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed. That was one of my favorite times for a DCEU movie at theaters. I got to see it way early and was surprised at how good it was. And then you got Joss Whedon's Justice League. This is when the regime really took over, changed everything. Aquaman was in there, but that was already in the bag before Zack Snyder left. It made a ton of money. It was a really good film. And then you can see Shazam, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, Black Adam. Now, obviously, we were in the middle of a pandemic for these films, and they got released, on HBO Max, which did affect the box office, okay? But here's the reality of the situation. Yes, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, these movies lost money. They were not as profitable because of the cost of the films to make. But the fact is, you had a whole crap load more people in the seats for Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman than you did from the other stuff that Hamada threw out there. Now, I really liked Shazam, but Shazam was a pretty unknown character too. I thought it would pretty much do the same as Black Adam. But it was a fun film. I'm very much looking forward to the sequel. So let's talk about what this means for Black Adam's future. Does this mean Black Adam is not going to get a sequel? No. There's a very good chance it will still get a sequel. Is it going to be a priority? No. Are we still going to see Black Adam in the future? Absolutely. He's part of the DCEU or the DCU at this stage. He's not going anywhere. But him getting his own film, they're going to think twice about that because of this. The fact is, when Zack Snyder was in charge at the beginning of this, more people were in theaters. Did it make as much? No, because of the cost of the movies. But there were more people who went to the movies. Way more people in the seats. His movies were way more excitable, way more engaging. And then the studio took this turn, totally went against Zack Snyder. They went off into this other direction, and the people in the seats, it hasn't been the same since. Aquaman was kind of an anomaly. I really like the scope of that film. Like, the end is pretty phenomenal. The whole entire fight, in the ocean was pretty amazing. Like, the scope of that was pretty awesome stuff. And that film was a lot of fun. I liked the music. I liked the cast. It was a very fun film. After that, it was all Hamada. And those films were miserable failures. Like, nobody cared for those. You can see that the direction clearly changed. It wasn't a small change. It was a big change. So to get people back in the theaters, you've got to go back to the beginning. You've got to get your Trinity back. You've got to go in that direction. Finish the story that Zack Snyder told. Let things play out, but continue to grow the universe. Now, what's really interesting is yesterday or the day before, we had James Gunn came out and made a bombshell statement that that they are shepherding in the films of the past, but also going to be creating new content for the future. Now, this is interesting. A lot of people, what I take of that they're going to consider everything that's been released as canon. I think Zack Snyder's Justice League will be canon. Man of Steel is going to be canon. I think they said they're going to be shepherding those films along with the new films that they're going to be creating. So they're not going to be forgetting about the past. I don't think The Flash is going to be the big eraser that everybody is claiming it to be. But we will see here in just, a few short months. Lots of things are going to be happening here for DC in the future. I'm still very optimistic about all of this. Until we get a schedule and we see what they're doing with contracts, there's a reason to be a little nervous. We've been in this position before, but I think things have never been more positive or we've had a better outlook than we do right now. That doesn't mean things can't blow up, but it's a great time to be a DC fan, especially when it comes to the film. So we're going to see what happens here in the future. Now, one other thing I wanted to address was somebody made the comment of, well, I'm not even going to talk about that. Somebody made the comment of Pattinson being the new Batman because of a poster that was released at this event they had over the weekend last week. And I keep trying to tell people that doesn't mean he's replacing Ben Affleck. That's the newest Batman film that was released, so yes, they're going to advertise that on the banner. That does not mean he's replacing Ben Affleck. There is just no way that's going to happen. Matt Reeves went through great effort to make sure that stays a separate universe. All right, if anything else gets released this week, I will be doing a new video. I will have my Indiana Jones video probably up later today, and then I will be doing a Rebel Moon update probably tomorrow, but we will see you guys on the next update.